This is called Rock and Roll Manifesto. She stood before me holding a record in her hand. A record that was long out of print, but one I loved and had spent years looking for. And this is back when it meant something to search for music. Back when record companies would let records go out of print and you could only find them used. Hell, this is back when there were record companies and records. And she told me that she found this particular record at the Goodwill store by her parents' house. And then she added, "Oh, and I don't love you anymore." Years later, it's the "oh" that's confusing. I said nothing for a really long time, and finally she touched my arm and said, "What are you thinking right now?" And I said this: I believe in guitars and guitarists. I believe in drums, but not in drummers. I believe in bass and keyboards, but I don't understand them. I believe in punk poetry and the rhyming couplet, in power chords and choruses so catchy you have to listen to them 18 times in a row instead of leaving your house. I believe in the long, slow fade and the fake ending and syncopated polyrhythms that leave you slightly off balance. I believe that there are some songs so perfect that they must have come down from the very gods themselves, from some mystical Valhalla where there is one perfect chord as yet unheard on this earth that instantly makes grown men weep. I believe in belt drive turntables and speaker wire and those big wooden crates of records that you lug from crappy apartment to crappy apartment, even if you leave your dishes and the furniture behind. I believe it doesn't matter who you love or who you fuck, but you never forget the music that was playing when you lost your virginity. And there is a problem if there was no music playing when you lost your virginity. I believe in the Clash and Buddy Holly and the Everly Brothers and John Lennon and the Ramones and Squeeze and Jane Siberry. I believe that Mama Cass Elliot invented Crosby, Stills and Nash. That's true, look it up. But Neil Young invented himself, and he would give it all up tomorrow if he could just sing like Smokey Robinson. I believe that Lou Reed was right when he said that he heard that New York station and his life was saved by rock and roll. And that must have been very confusing for John Cale, who was classically trained and composed symphonies and played the viola, the fucking viola, to be in a band with Lou Reed, who actually said that anyone who writes a song that has more than 2 chords in it is just showing off. I believe that Paul McCartney is so supremely talented that even his farts come out gorgeous and melodic, and yet there is a special circle in hell where Wonderful Christmas Time plays over and over on an endless loop as punishment for the worst sins you can imagine. But most of all, I believe you don't deserve that record. You haven't suffered for it. Oh, I believe that you don't love me anymore, but I don't believe you love this record because I'm the one who told you about this record. And how I hunted it down in used record stores in 5 different states. This record just fell into your lap. You haven't put in the time. You never really loved this tragic band whose leader committed suicide and left a letter for their manager who had embezzled millions, saying that he was a soulless bastard. That same band whose second most important songwriter killed himself a few years after, and left a note for the lead guitarist that just read, "You're next." You don't deserve this record because you haven't suffered for it. And I believe that's my fault, because I taught you the ways of my people, the obsessive music fans. I brought you to our most sacred places. I took you to the used record store below the vegan restaurant in the lesbian college town where they sold the import version of that XTC double album for a loss because they hated how the American record company cut 5 songs and rearranged the order just to make it fit on 1 disc. I now know a mistake to play for you the music I love and explain to you the history of these bands and why every song was important. And there was always a reason. It was never just, I liked it, because I really listened. I really cared, not like you. And after each listening session, you would go home and put on James Taylor's greatest hits or that stupid live Barry Manilow album that your sister gave you for Christmas the year before she went off to college. And that is why, when you die, the hollow husk that would have held your soul if you only had one will dry up and blow away, and no one will mourn you and no one will remember. And then she said nothing for a while. And finally, she held out the record to me and she said, "You're right, I don't deserve this." And I pushed it back to her and I said, "Listen, someday when you need rock and roll to save you, you're gonna wanna have this. Because on that dark night of your soul, you will be fucked if all you have to protect you is Christopher Cross or Huey Lewis and the News." And she took the record and went off. And look, the more evolved 2023 version of myself wants to tell you that if you get pleasure from Christopher Cross and Huey Lewis and the News, I'm cool with that. All these years later, my friends who were even more into music than I was, they hardly ever listen to records anymore. And they tell me it's because they have families and careers. And okay, there's a few things in my life now that are more important too. Still, on days like today, when I'm driving home late at night and I've got the window open, if the right song comes on the radio, I'll pump the gas, I'll drive faster. It's silly, it's stupid. I know I should have outgrown this years ago, but here's the thing. I still believe, and I still find myself in the few used record stores that remain open, going through each and every one of those bins. Only now I can't tell you if what I'm really looking for is another copy of that record, or just the girl who deserves it. Thank you.